It's early in the morning, beautiful morning. We're on the way to Heathrow. We're going to be spending a week with our dear friends Robert Keeley and Andy Timmons. It's going to be fun. Touchdown. Entree. Welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Robert here.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful Mr. Robert Keeley. Thank you so much for having us back.
What an honor to have you fly, a couple hours.
Yeah.
Many hours to get here. Thank you so much.
Well, I was here in January. I popped over to say hi before NAMM, and I had to come back. This place is so inspiring, and I just wanted people to get a glimpse, sort of behind, like the Wizard of Oz, peek behind the curtain, as it were. What I want to do, we're going to have a look. We do a factory tour so you guys can see the process. We're going to meet some of the key members of Robert's staff. Robert has 33 staff at the moment. We're not going to get to meet everyone, unfortunately, but I want to go back to where it all started for you.
Right.
With number one, the Keeley Compressor.
We got to the Keeley Compressor because I had become a fan of Trey Anastasio's guitar sound.
From Fish.
I heard a bootleg recording or something, and it had him sustaining a note that for just what it appeared to be endlessly. And I thought, that is the most, and it's wrapped up into several of their earlier songs.
Right.
That they have this note that will ring out forever. And then I heard a really interesting clean guitar sound with humbuckers, and it had this very over-compressed type of sound, and it was very intriguing. I hadn't heard other people do it. I was, and so that's really where it all started. When I saw that he had a Ross compressor, and I started looking around on eBay, this would be about year 2000, the very beginning of 2001. Right. I started looking on eBay, and they were at the time $400 a piece for these things. And I saw that it was made in Chanute, Kansas. So I saved up my pennies, and I eventually got one. But I saw a schematic online, and I could be wrong, but I think R.G. Keene had a technology article. And, if you're...
All hail the mighty R.G. Keene.
Exactly.
We owe that man a lot.
We do, absolutely. With the schematics that were available online, I was able to build my own Keeley compressor. As it started to come together, and as I was waiting for all the little parts or whatever to come in and to gather everything up, I started thinking, what do I want this pedal to look like? And it was almost from the beginning that I wanted to sell these so that I could pay for my parts to make them. It wasn't really, so I'm going to go into business, I'm going to be a pedal guy, but it was like, I really want these things to sell so I can, support, myself or something. This is pretty fun. What I wanted to do was to build tube amplifiers. And so pedals was like, well, okay, if I can't do what I want, I'll do pedals. You know what I mean? Is what it seemed like. But then after, you get some feedback from people who are like, oh, this is a really interesting compressor. You got a good thing going here. And then it's off to the races. It's like, oh yeah, you like that? Well, let me try to do some of this. Yeah, we have number one over here. This is the very first one. I only have it back because thankfully it broke. I sent this one out in a panic. This was serial number one. This is my first one. This is September of 2001, serial number one.
Wow.
So 090101. And I got to a point where I said that I was 4 to 6 weeks out on shipping stuff. I had hit 6 weeks, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have to sell my own unit because I don't want any customers mad at me. Do you know this is a recurring theme?
I hear you.
I don't want anyone mad at me. So I sent this off to them, and then 3 years later, all of a sudden, Isaac Nelson comes back, and he's like, hey, Rob, I think this says it's your first one. Is that right? I said, yeah, I had to send it out. I said, go ahead and tell the guy we'll give him $200 for this broken old compressor, and we'll give him a brand new one, brand new 4-knob. Awesome. So he took the deal, and I got my first one back.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've seen some great pictures of you in the early days with playing guitars.
Yes.
Where did the engineering part come in?
It really all started actually at the same point in time. My dad, who's technically my stepdad, but my dad played guitar and he was an electrical engineer.
Oh,
His dad was an
wow.
electrical engineer too. So it's like, it comes from almost like a long line of engineering. So the ideas were in my head. And I can actually remember in the 70s looking at some book that my dad had and it said a voltage tripler. And I was like, Dad, can you help me build this? He's like, absolutely not. You'll hurt yourself until you know how to build it yourself. You know, you don't need to be involved in anything like that. So, and then when I found myself here in Oklahoma, and I was delivering pizzas, I thought, man, I have got to make a little bit more money than pizza delivery boy. I've got to get myself to a tech school. I've got to do something. And I went to a tech school and I started repairing audio gear. That's what let me see all the stuff from Sony, JVC, Panasonic, all the Japanese audio manufacturers, car stereo manufacturers. And then I saw the USA type of home audio stuff, the really high-end stuff. At the time, Hafler and Fosgate, a lot of these names in the car stereo world were using MOSFETs and really cool things to make good sounding car stereo gear. There was a time period where there was actually a made in the US car stereo world, especially with drivers and amplifiers. So you put that in there and you see this kind of hot rodding of circuits and designs and stuff like that. And I ended up working for another engineer that modified and tweaked things and made his own circuit boards in a little solder pot, dipping one board at a time. And so that's how the whole engineering and thing. So I eventually started going to school to become an engineer. And it was really right after I graduated. Didn't want to get a real job, so I became a teacher. and that's where I hired my first students away. I worked there for 1 year. I hired Jacob Adams and a couple other guys. They all built all the first Keeley stuff, and I taught them how to mod pedals while they were students.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's get to the mods. So
yeah.
I remember the first pedals that I had of yours, I think was, you modded for me an old made in Taiwan CE2, a blues driver. I bought the Java Boost and still have them all. And they're all fantastic. Andy Timmons actually has my modded blues driver.
Right.
I'm glad he's got it. He's putting it to good use, but I'm just reminding you, it's still mine. It's on loan. So how did you get into modding pedals? What was the idea behind that?
It was really as simple as looking at those RG Keen technology things and seeing that if I changed any of the components and I just put it on a toggle switch, I could change the clipping style, I could change the bass response and things like that. And again, it was something that I had kind of seen in the car stereo and home stereo world. You'd see some fancy switch on there or something, and then you'd look at the schematic and you're like, oh, that's really all they're doing? Okay.
Right, okay.
Well, I could apply all that to pedals. And that's how I came up with mods, is seeing it in other areas, other arenas. I mean, I read the book by Gerald Weber from Kendrick Amplifiers, and he was talking about modding a lot of amplifiers. So a lot of the mods to Fender amps or Marshall amps that were talked about just gave me ideas for doing the exact same thing with pedals.
What were you doing to the blues driver to make it more awesome?
Right. Yeah, the changes in the blues driver mostly revolved around getting some of the capacitors, the electrolytic capacitors out of there. And I used to use a bunch of these silver mica capacitors. They're really expensive or hard to find now, but for the filtering, just in the off case that the sum of changing about 18 parts in that thing would increase the vibe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And prevent any unwanted bad sounding distortions from occurring. And that's where I started playing with changing the diodes up and making it a little bit asymmetrical. I noticed that I could see it just clip completely different. One side would say be clean and the other side would have the typical distortion of the pedal. And I thought, oh, isn't this great? Because this just makes it sound more natural to anybody.
Now that exploded for you, right? Because I remember like being in the UK and seeing your modded pedals everywhere.
Yeah, David Cartwright.
David Cartwright, that's right.
Yep,
Yeah.
way back in the early days. He was very instrumental in getting my pedals over to England there, and he bought the robertkeeley.co.uk. He had everything going on, you know. I think it was called Moon Phase or something.
Moon Phase Electronics, that's right.
Yeah, and but it was so big. The mods grew so big. Definitely more popular than my pedals. Even though the compressor was a mainstay, it couldn't keep up with the mods. So for example, I have, Boss Roland gave me a dealer account, and at one point in time, I sold more Boss pedals than any other independent retailer. Yeah, that's how good.
That's wild.
Every month I was buying a box or 5 boxes of DS1s by the 20 lot. You know, when you buy Boss pedals, you got to get 20 at a time.
Yeah.
What fits in their box. And we were doing 100 blues drivers, 100 DS1s a month, easy.
Wow.
And then, you know, maybe like 40 or 20 MT2s, 20 TR2s, but every month. SD1s, we do maybe 40 of those. And then 100 tube screamers at least.
Wow.
It was quite a process to modify a pedal because, you know, we'd pull out a dozen components, then we take it to the drill press and increase the size for the LED, then maybe drill it out for the toggle switch that would be added. And so, that was, and it's not for a lot of money because a mod was usually between $50 and $75. So there really wasn't a, and then you had to, if you were going to try to sell them to dealers, you know, oh gosh, then it just didn't really work out. So I was anxious to eventually, when I got my act together and kind of built phase 2 of Keeley Electronics, then I was very anxious to start putting my own pedals out there because then I saw, you know, JHS, Earthquake, or Walrus. Everybody has pedals, and I'm like the last guy to the pedal party, and I'm like, how did this happen? I was asleep at the wheel.
We're going to have a look at Robert's facility, and when we come back, we're going to discuss exactly how we got here. Here with my dear friends, of course, Mr. Robert Keeley, and Robert's right-hand man, Aaron Pierce. So where should we start then with a tour?
Definitely the pinball machine.
Let's start there.
Yes. So when we were designing this building, I wanted to make sure that we had a brilliant kitchen area where people could eat, because after you go to Sweetwater and you see their kitchen and they hired a Michelin star chef to like prepare and cook their meals for them. That's just too incredible. And it's really not that expensive.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just not to feed these people
Yeah.
here. So every Thursday, I found out that we hired a guy that he was trying to get a restaurant business going during COVID. It didn't work out, so he decided to make a career change and work here. And I was like, oh no, I got a place for you right over here. And so we have a full kitchen and we cook for everybody on Thursdays.
Amazing.
I know, I'm still trying to figure out how we can get breakfast here every morning.
Oh, hey, Daniel, what's up, man?
You all right, buddy? Wow.
Yeah. The building is 17,000 square foot. So would we divide it by 9 to get meters?
Let's divided by, times it by 3.
2,000, does this feel like 2,000
Yes, it does.
square meters?
It absolutely does.
You know you've arrived when you can park your forklift over by the loading dock.
Do you drive that thing around?
No, that's
come
right.
on.
This is our CNC area.
Right.
And we have 4 CNCs. This is the one we started on. This is the one that Tackett helped me
Oh,
on.
okay, right.
Yes. And we literally had to figure out how to make these jigs.
Right.
That's what Darren Tackett and I figured out at the last shop, is how to cut out these things out of high density plastic so that we could load the cases in there, bolt this whole contraption together so we could get the DC jacks on the end there to hold everything in place. The same thing for over here then for the top surface. Down in Norman, just south of here, about 40 minutes or so, is where we have our fiber laser. We have a 3 kilowatt fiber laser. Did you see that?
I did.
Oh yeah, you did. And
So this
that's
is
a lot of fun.
So these are your Hammond cases that are that you drill out. Then you have a whole other shop that does your metal work, like the new pedals, the 4-in-1 series, and
The Octosi.
all of that stuff. Okay.
First products that we released on the new enclosures were we got commissioned by the Beach Boys to come out with 2 products.
Yeah.
And so those were the first 2 we brought to market, but really
So it was the rotary and the 12 string.
Yep.
Right?
exactly, And then, but the 4-in-1 series for us, you know, we were, 2 years of development around that idea, and we knew we wanted that series to come out, and that's kind of the new era of Keeley. So the Noble Screamer was the first drive pedal in that enclosure,
And the Noble Screamer has been huge, right? That's been a
it's been really good.
big,
definitely.
yeah.
It actually happened right there when we were coming out with the Noble Screamer, because I remember sitting in that morning meeting in the break room there, and Creighton had developed a square, a Hammond case, Noble Screamer, Blues Disorder, and the Super Rodent. Okay, they were all designed in the square cases, and we were just taking delivery of our turret punch. I was like, hey, let's see if we can get this to bend a case. And so we started playing with case sizes, and we finally got the ergonomics right. And I was like, well, now there's no way in heck we're going to release these other pedals in a square case. So now we just got to switch everything over. So then, you know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
We should introduce Dan and everybody to Sean Spears.
Yep.
He's our repair technician manager.
So when you make 24 years worth of stomp boxes, they break. And so you have to have a full-time service department.
Right.
So
How are you?
Hey, bud, good to see you. How you doing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Cranking out emails. Gotta love Mondays. Oh, you're live.
we have with the service department, like you were saying, Sean and I tried to develop a policy where a unit is only here for 24 hours before it gets repaired or replaced.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone upset again, you know. This is a fun part. This is our powder coating facility.
This is the cleanest powder coating facility I have ever seen.
Exactly. We have white walls. We've been here 4 years, and we still have white walls. Yeah. Most powder coating facilities are just abysmally dirty, dusty, coated in soot.
So what are we building here?
Katana minis.
Oh, awesome.
I can't believe we're building Aria pedals. So we have 2. This is how I first started. I didn't realize I didn't have the perspectives and geometry in place, but so I got these huge booths where we could, you know, roll in stuff, powder coat it, and then a huge oven. But I find that these guys really like the small system, so we actually have an electric oven and a small booth, and we can do short runs, and it's much simpler, faster.
SMT?
Yep.
Here we go.
This is really the last part that I brought on is the circuit board manufacturing.
Right.
It's probably best if we came over here. This pick and place, that's what this is called, a pick and place.
Yeah.
Is building the new Halo core, right?
Yep.
Yep.
No, that one's on Octosi
This one's Octosi?
So you can see here, circuit board on there, and this machine is picking out the components and placing it on the circuit board with a bit of paste, and eventually that'll go into an oven where it flows the solder. Hey presto, circuit board ready to go. Yeah. But again, this whole process done in-house.
Yeah, we didn't know what we were doing. I talked to Mancorp several years ago.
Right.
And I said, hey, I've seen a couple of your pieces of gear in the field. This is incredible. Do you educate people on how to use this stuff? He's like, oh yeah, it's real simple. We just, by the time we leave, you'll be able to make one of your own circuit boards. I was like, that's a deal. Done deal.
Wow.
And so the first one we came out with is about almost like a quarter of the size of this one, and it only had 2 heads in it. And but we learned on that. We had a much simpler screen printer for the solder.
Right.
We put the solder on, and then we had this oven right there. That one, as a matter of fact, and we were able to do 40, 50,000 pedals a year on that simple one system. And you pretty much get hooked once you can build your own circuit boards.
Right.
And then you have we already had the powder coating and the printing, UV LED printing. So by the time you put your own circuit boards, we had done some stuff in the past where we just populate the units and dip it in a solder pot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not really production.
No.
Like this. But it's been tremendously fun. So then once I felt like we couldn't make the 4-in-1 driveline and we couldn't make the Halo, the Echoes on just that one machine without having to change out the parts reels, I was like, okay, let's go to the bigger one. So then we put 174 reels on here, and I'm like, okay, now we can just do our digital stuff. Now what about all of our analog pedals and drive pedals? So then, that's why we have two lines now, so that we don't have as much downtime between swapping out parts.
Oh, wow.
We kind of are allergic to swapping out parts, so we try to load as many of our products up on one machine so we don't have to do that.
How many days a week are these machines running?
7 days a week.
7 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah, we have a weekend crew that comes in Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's
amazing.
Yeah, they work 12 hours each of those days, so they get their 36 in. That's all we work here is 36.
Right.
And it keeps it nice and even. And everyone gets paid for 40.
Wow.
So after the circuit boards are built, then part 2 is what this young man's doing right here. He's loading all the through-hole components on the boards. And once he gets, I don't see where your little rack is, but, oh, right here. So once he's done, he'll place all of the boards that have the components loaded in it here on the rack. And then, is it once a day that you guys use the wave solder?
Once or every other day, so about 2 to 3 times a week.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So this is fun here because these things, see, they're not soldered yet.
Okay, they're placed in there.
They're just,
and they'll go on the flow solder.
right here. These are a bunch of our boards that are going to go through the wave solder. And the wave solder looks like this amazing silver river of solder when it's all running. When it's all heated up, this is just a waterfall of silver solder. And drags the boards right over it, and somebody's here catching them. And that's how it solders all those. So everything gets tested before it's placed in a case.
Right.
I love it. See, this is perfect because they're testing what's going to become Echoes or a Halo or a Hydra. That's what this platform is right here.
So that pedal can be either of those?
I know, that's what I love about the way, that's what I love about me. So what I'm like is, I really don't like this whole circuit board designing procedure. Matter of fact, that's why I've never done it myself. I like it so little that I'm going to make sure I cram as many pedals onto one thing as I can. So yeah, it looks like it's just one pedal, but this is an infinite well.
You've now got to a point in your design and production where you're going MIDI.
Yes.
That's why you're here.
Last year, to make sure we don't make any mistakes, because I have definitely dragged my feet in the whole MIDI thing, because I didn't want to cause myself problems unless I had it all worked out, and I didn't want to create a customer service issue.
Sure.
So now we're at a point where we have the sound quality and everything like that, and come to find out, it's not too hard to implement MIDI in our designs with the processor that we're using and things like that. So, it's just right around the corner. We just want to be safe, and because we don't want to have people sending stuff in for updates, etc. Oh, it's horrible. So
amazing.
Should we go to print?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Here's our print facility. We have 4 Mamakis, and these
Mamaki is this big machine here,
yep,
right?
these Mamaki printers are what is called a UV LED printer, and it prints the your graphic with an enamel ink, and then it cures it with an ultraviolet LED, and so it becomes extremely durable. You can't hardly even scratch it off. So it's really wonderful. And then we also build our own jigs. So we built all these jigs on our plastic printer. I forgot to show you, but we have a 3D printer, so we can create our own jigs to hold the pedals because we print on all the different surfaces.
Oh yeah.
So this one is really clever. It's for the Octosi, and so we can like dip it in if we're going to print on the back plate, and then we can turn this thing around, and if we're going to print on the bottom plate for the graphics for the pitch shifting, for example. So, oh yeah, check out this. Here we go. Between powder coating and printing, we can just do anything.
Oh
Some of
wow.
these-
And all the different finishes as well.
oh yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So fun.
But you can do matte and gloss and
Exactly.
Wow.
This has a really interesting feel to it, both powder and.
Oh, check
Yep.
that out.
Oh yeah, check out
So-
these.
Robert, how do you do this? That's wild.
Okay, that was done with the CNC. Ray took that and just took probably a drag bit of some sort and
How
kind of
cool.
almost did like an etching.
Before you tell me what you do, or don't tell me what you I'm just curious if I can eyeball it.
So there's a dealer, Bees Music, and I think they're in Michigan. Oh my gosh, I hope I'm not wrong. But he has got this cat theme for all of the pedals that he offers custom through his shop. So
There's a cat
here's
with
just
tentacles.
one. Yes,
Fantastic.
exactly. And you can tell we have way too much time on our hands because we even have
A Christmas
ugly,
compressor.
ugly sweater pedals.
So believe it or not, these guys, they're responsible for, where are we at probably? How many you think we're doing a week right now?
It usually averages about 1,000.
So we've got
It's been that way for several years.
4 guys that are
Put the
building.
pedals together.
Yes.
No way.
Yeah.
Final production techs.
Incredible.
We don't have any on the weekend, so it's just these 4 guys
In
for the
4 days.
That's all the production has to
So
go through them.
doing 250 a day.
Yeah.
And
That's
like
wild.
Right now, Cody, he's doing rotaries. Josh is doing comp pluses. And as you can see, I think our other guys are on lunch, but 4 guys. It's credible.
Everything's tested here as well.
So we have
No.
2 points of quality control, like Maestro was saying. In the SMT, we have them running it through our audio analyzer.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's before these guys get it.
Okay.
Then after these guys get it, believe it or not, we really have one guy that does all 1,000 who
That's the cook.
he's the cook.
The guy that cooks for us.
He's cooking.
He puts the final
Fantastic.
simmer on
And so
everything.
he's our last point of
He's our
quality
taste
control.
tester.
Right.
And so every pedal has, its tried and true standard of what he's comparing it to. We have a tester for every product.
Yeah, I've got a little library over there of every pedal. After they're done with everything, honestly, everything funnels right through here, and everything gets tested one at a time to our reference. That's our reference library. There's all the pedals.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so if he's building something that isn't, you can see what we build a lot of because it's sitting right here on his desk. You know what I mean? But if he's gonna go build the arias, there's an aria over there somewhere.
So you can see, like Maestro was saying, 4-in-1 series are taking off for us. The Halo Core, Zoma, Rotary. Luckily, everything we've put out in the last year and a half, all the new stuff. Octosi. And so Jeremy's the guy that's the final point of testing and has his own final assembly checklist. So we have some accountability in each department, and it just flows really well, So.
Who designed the flow?
I think Danny actually did. Danny Black. He had more interest in trying to get it to go from where it's the metalworking and the loading dock over there and the heavy stuff and the circuit boards put the circuit boards here and the parts and knobs over there so that they can build them and send them that way. You know what I mean?
One of my favorite pedals of yours was the slap back with the reverb.
Memphis Sun.
The Memphis Sun.
Oh, yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that thing. So if a dealer calls up and says, look, we've got...
Check out how awesome this is. This
Yeah.
goes into what I was saying over there with
Yeah.
the Halo core and the Echoes pedals, how I like to design everything so that
Right.
it can be more than one thing. So I don't know exactly where it is, but it's right around here somewhere. And it's called our universal reverb board. And right here is where we actually program, whether it's a Memphis Sun or an Aurora or what have you. Here's our little spin programming station. And they will literally...
This is our universal reverb.
There you
board.
go. And so there's not a chip in it. It's not a Memphis Sun yet. Hasn't been born.
So you can do small runs.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
See, that's why I like this
that's
place.
so clever.
It's a
That's
lot.
why I like this place.
When we talked earlier about Aaron Tackett, this is what Maestro gave him and said, okay, now
And that's what
design on.
Creighton did.
Yeah.
Had to design it so that it was universally flexible too. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? So, but at that point in time, you could say, "Hey, mate, I really want a capital reverb by the time I leave here today," and I could do it.
Yeah, but don't do that because you got a cease and desist from doing that. So
Really?
don't do capital.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
There's more
All right,
stories
all
later.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've gotten a couple cease and desist.
But it's so fun because if I make, say, too many Mark III circuit boards, let's say we got on a kick and we thought, oh, we're going to sell tons of these when it was called the Muse Driver.
Speaking of cease and desist.
And then you call it the Mark III and it doesn't sell as much.
Right.
But we don't have to build all the cases. We don't have to pre-build all these things. We can just go as dealers order.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's just a day or two before we ship out instead of putting stuff,
that
oceans
isn't
of
stock that you've
equipment
got to
on the shelf.
build
Exactly.
and money that's sat on the
Exactly.
shelf. And, yeah. This place is amazing.
Yeah.
Right. When did you have the vision for this?
The vision for this really honestly started a lot earlier. As soon as I fell in love with pedals and making people happy with new sounds, and I was inspiring their music, the idea of making a long-term pedal company, a manufacturing company, is really what I consider myself. Electronics manufacturing is really been the goal. I really have this idea in my head that I want to create something where our employees have children that eventually work here. I want this to be a multi-generational place. I know it sounds kind of funny in this day and age, where everyone's trying to maybe be an influencer, but I still think that it's worth it for us to make stuff. And especially if we're making stuff for musicians, it's pretty cool.
It's a really inspiring place to be. But one of the things I love about this is that you've built a community at Keeley. In all the time that you've been doing this, to get to this point, what are some of the big lessons that you've learned?
Well, drugs are bad.
Okay, kids, drugs are bad.
Yes.
Okay.
Especially opiates.
Right.
They really zap your spirit. You know what I mean? And you can't run a marathon if you're on, synthetic smack or something. So you try to avoid that.
You've
right?
been really open about this part of your journey.
Yeah,
which
it's just kind of it explains why I started with the Keeley Compressor and a Katana, and then there's like nothing for a decade.
Okay.
And it's like literally the first things I did in the first couple months are what sustained for the years. Can you believe it?
Wow.
There's nothing. I mean, the next thing that comes out after those first couple Fuzzhead Java Boost Katana is actually that green Keeley phaser in, I know, right? And that was done by an engineer that I hired named Scott Murphy. But it's, it just puts a big, huge gap in there. So all I was running on there was the adrenaline or the products from the first couple months.
I mean, that
or
is
years.
testament to how great
Popular
they
they
are.
were.
Yeah.
I know.
Still are.
I'm pretty proud of the fact that John Mayer ran that Katana for at least 8 years now, maybe a decade. I think it's actually been a decade now, and that's, I think, the longest pedal that's been on his board. I hope I don't jinx myself, but that's That's a pretty cool thing to get
Amazing.
it dialed in, because that was definitely dialed in by my own ears. I'm sitting there,
Wow.
thinking, this is too much bass for a humbucker. This is just right for a Telecaster. I don't want to get a lot of distortion. I want this to be a clean boost, and it's got to be really great sounding. Where an average guitar player thinks 6 or 7 should be the sweet spot. Yeah.
Okay, so drugs are bad.
Yeah. Drugs are bad. You should pay your taxes.
You should pay your taxes.
Because when the IRS comes after you, it's going to be 25% tax for this, 25% penalty for here, and then you're paying back oodles and oodles of money.
Okay.
But honestly, you have to be completely open and transparent with your customers too. Because if they catch you in making up stuff or making false claims, they will definitely go out there and tell 10 other people not to buy from you.
Yeah.
So you have
And
to.
especially now, right? That effect is amplified.
Sure.
To emphasize the point, you'll have 100 people say, this is the best thing in the world. And it's the one guy that comes out and goes,
I know.
and that's the one that,
Gets exploded.
Yeah.
Explodes. Just like what you were saying there is kind of interesting. It makes me think about the Octosi pedal. And there was this Reddit stream that happened a couple weeks ago, and people were commenting on there about how good the pitch shifter was and how the latency was remarkably small.
Yep.
And I was joking in there, talking with somebody, and I said, well, it's kind of hard to brag about latency. I mean, what do you say? Hey, mine's shorter than yours, and the flood of comments were like, you never brag about your stuff. You need to tell everyone how good this is. And it's like, it's just not part of who I am to go, hey, this Octosi is the best pitch shifter in the world.
Yeah.
This is the best big muff you've ever heard. I really have to let people hear it themselves. And it has to be the end user saying that. It's like, just like with the Halo, you have to have Andy Timmons, this tone god, telling you that, no, this is the sound right
This
here,
is it. Yeah.
instead of the engineer saying it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
I'm not like a great guitar player by any means. I'm not even really a musician, but it's really critical to have those big musicians kind of lend credence to it, or even the people on Reddit saying, "Wow, this is a technical achievement on this thing," and that when that gets out, when the average users are saying how fun it is to create what the Octosi and how musical it is, that's more than me telling you how much I think it's close to electroharmonics or something like that.
I think I told you recently that I've got to a point now that I can listen to a pedal and sort of tell if they've got a really good guitar player on staff. Right? That's one of the things about the pedals that you do is the way they feel and respond. When I first came to you and said, hey, look, we would love to do something together, and let's do an overdrive with me and Mick.
Yeah.
And the D&M drive was born. And I remember talking to Aaron, and he was like, oh, you can't wait for you to try this. And Aaron was really excited about it. I love his guitar playing. So I'm like, okay, wonderful. Sort of between you and Aaron and Creighton and like everyone else, there's this magic team that is able to tick all the boxes. It feels right. It sounds right.
I agree with you so much. It's so critical to have a good guitar player at this company that I was willing to hire a guy that doesn't produce. He wasn't sitting back there making pedals, putting knobs on stuff and putting feet on the bottom. No.
And playing a little bit of guitar on the side. No.
No. His job is to play guitar and for my pedals to sound good. And then it's like, oh wait, you're actually a wonderful person. You're now the artist relations person because you're the face, for the company in terms of being nice and meeting all their demands.
On a personal note, the first time that I met you at NAMM, and you've always been so generous with your time, that you've remained so accessible and have been so willing to help out with anyone that just wants to sound better, wants to feel more connected. On behalf of all the pedal community, thank you so much for all your years of inspiration, and long may it continue. And we're so excited about some of the new stuff that you've got, coming out.
It's fun.
It's just wild. So thank you so much, mate. It's been
Man, you're
really,
very welcome.
really awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robert Keeley.
Dan Steinhardt.
He explains what he heard. So there's George Harrison on the electric 12 string, there's John Lennon on the electric 6 string, bass and piano. So you guys can go home and try this. It's an F chord with a G on top, but also a G and C in the bass. So it's G, C, F, A, C, G. It sounds pretty good on its own. If Daniel plays the D sus chord, play that. And then Paul McCartney back there's going to play a D. And then Mr. Rich is going to play an octave D and then the matching voicing of bass. If I count this in 1, 2, 3, 4. What does that feel like? 1, 2, 3, 4. We're gonna do that 8 more times. That's unbelievable. Okay. There's a song that goes with it, okay? So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's been a
That's the end of the trip to the US. We've had the best time. A massive thank you to, of course, Robert Keeley and Aaron Pierce and everyone at Keeley. And, of course, to my brother Andy Timmons and Brian Meader, everyone at the Guitar Sanctuary. That was an incredible night. And it's wonderful that so many people turned out to see Andy and myself. Yeah, really, really wonderful evening. So hopefully we'll be back before too long. All right, thanks everyone. Bye.